Okay, so here is the comparison between the 2500 keybed I just quote-unquote restored and my 2600, which is a nightmarishly noisy keybed. $2,500. $2,600. Again. So one difference from the 2500 to the 2600 is they improved the way you remove and replace these ends to the keyboard. On the 2500 is this supremely annoying slot method where, if you look at how this fits in here, I still have this disassembled, but you can see there's these sliding tabs right there. Those tabs sticking up, 1 and 2 right there. And those slots fit into those holes. So you have to smack the side forward, well, when it's assembled, you have to smack the side forward to get it to slide out of those two little clips to come out after you've removed all the screws. Real pain in the butt. However, on the 2600, they improved the design, and they still want you to lock it in on the top, but the way they do it is they have this sliding metal tab. So when removing it, you want to remove those two screws holding that purple rectangle in, and then you're going to use something to pry it downward. And you don't have to go very far, not even that far, but literally it's only a little over 1/4 inch where it locks into that tab. A lot easier than on the 2500. And Shazam, and in goes the screws. Okay, so addressing how to remove the keyboard assembly. This is the keyboard assembly, just this section in here. And you will see there's also a dividing plate between the key assembly and all the electronics, circuit boards, etc. So what you want to remove is just the keyboard assembly, the keybed, as we say. Okay, so in order to remove the keybed to work on the keybed, there's the 9 large screws, which when you're looking at the bottom of the keyboard, it's pretty obvious. They're by far the thicker of the screws available, or screws you'll be dealing with under there. And then there is the screws that are holding in the bracket, this metal connector bracket, which anchors the actual lid to the bottom. There's a bunch of those screws along the middle. Those have to come out. And then you have to take out all the screws that are holding the back itself of the lid together. So the whole lid becomes portable and the keybed is freed up. And then out it comes. So when you're taking them off, the flat keys have copper colored springs, the naturals have silver colored springs. Little more tension on these guys because obviously the keys are larger and weightier and require a greater spring tension, which they engineered in. So the copper springs have a little less tension, the silver springs a little more. And thusly, you just pull down on that shank, and they pretty easily come right off. I mean, depending on your finger strength, I guess. I'm going to put one back on here just to show you this will be the reassembly procedure. Little loop, sharp little hook that they go under. And you just put it on there and pop it over the top and in. Shazam, not a big deal. So now they're up. And you want to, as I said, remove the flats with the naturals because the naturals pull out. You see how they're hook-shaped? So you need to pull them forward. as you pull out and forward, they come out pretty easily. The flats are hard to wrestle out if that natural's in place. They also need to come forward a little bit. Not too much pressure. See their little hook there? So both the keys have these hooks that require being pushed forward slightly to finagle them forward to get those two hooks to pull to come out of their slots. You know, when you put them back in, same deal. Now, when you put all the keys back in, you can put all the flats in first. Take a cheapo, any flathead screwdriver, a little on the smaller side, so it navigates the little slots here a little better. The slots for the naturals a little wider. The slot for the flats is narrower, but you know, you can angle the screwdriver a little bit, and you know, you just push those in. That's a tab. You push that in. That's what you're doing. You're pushing in on that with your screwdriver. And what I do is I just go down the keyboard with my thumb pressing against the metal bar here, nice, comfortable, strong metal bar, and use my index finger to push up while I'm doing that. Okay, I'm going to do an overview of the areas of felt on the action, just so you understand where the noise may be occurring from. You have the two top felts, strips running all along. The outer one is where the naturals hit against when you press down the natural. Back row is for the flats. You have the two rows underneath, directly beneath those. That is, the front one is where the hooks, which of course is what you're being conscious about when you remove and reinstall the keys, because both the naturals and flats have those hooks. And what those hooks do is they hit against that bottom row of felt when the key is released. The row is behind the plate for the flats. So there's those 4 rows of felt. Then you have the main culprit of where most of this noise occurs, which is this row of felt underneath the weights. And that's what I've replaced with reupholstery grade felt using acrylic caulk on both these keyboards. Huge difference. I mean, it worked. The amount of noise, well, for one thing, the degree of wear on all 4 of those rows of felts is minor. So, and the 2600 keyboard, that was a very used keyboard. It obviously seen a lot of hours of playing and duty. So, I am not that concerned that these 4 rows of felt show so little wear when clearly there's that many hours of play on the keyboard. So short of it is you could replace all 4 of those rows, but unless they really visually look like a problem, I would advise against it and just stick to replacing the row underneath the weights, which is really where the problems are. The other points of felt are on the weights, and I would not attempt to replace those. Yeah, that does make some noise when you press down the keys, but it's nothing compared to the amount of noise on the key release that was occurring from that row of felt. The other thing is, look, this felt is piano grade using a piano grade adhesive. When these keys push down on it, it's creating an angled force that, unless you're using a top grade felt and adhesive, would clearly push the felt, either damage the felt and probably push the felt off. So I wouldn't even attempt that. There's a strip of felt, it's about a 1/2 inch tall, centimeter-ish, that runs in a slot the entire length of the 2 halves of the key bed. I don't see any reason to attempt that. It'd be a ridiculous amount of effort. Okay, so I've jumped ahead a couple steps because it's just kind of logical what you do to get to this point. There's the key bed over there, and on the bottom, here's the actual hammer assemblies, the actuators, and this is the actuator assemblies in 2 pieces, 2 lengths. I've got the other half in here, but here's the one length exposed, and it's attached from the bottom to the metal base with standard little flathead screws. So there's about 40 of those that you have to take out. This is my method. I'm not saying it's the best method, but it is a method. I have a long ass metal bar clamp here, which I cleaned, because it is up against the felts on these, which I use to press down on the back of the keys, like that. It's just a bar that's pressing down on all these guys, like that. There's a lip on this gear case, and that actually is helping keep this, it's creating resistance from the whole action, the weight assembly wanting to push out. And note that I took Gorilla Tape and just Gorilla Taped at 3 points here, because the whole assembly wants to slide forward from the pressure of the bar clamp pushing down on the felts. The whole assembly wants to move forward. You put the bar clamp over those puppies like that. And I just kind of keep my arm over here. As you push down and those open up, which is not a perfect science, but you get the hang of it eventually. When you get those guys where you want them, reach over, tighten the bar clamp. And then, per before, the way I'm handling the where these guys tend to, they don't open as wide and you really want to get in there. I'm just taking 10 drill bits and very lightly, you know, starting maybe right here, but having a large index of bits. But I don't push those drill bits in hard. They're literally just barely in there at all. So you end up with nicely open jaws on all these puppies. The noisiest is when you release the key, it flops down on this rubber strip that you see throughout here, and that becomes hard. And when the key releases, that's what you're hearing, is that super noisy drop. I don't really think you have to address this bar in the assembly, either lubing it or anything, but definitely I advise against trying to pop out this row. Although it'll be tempting because of what you have to do. Here's the culprit. This rubber that you're dealing with in here, there's this rubber strip, or felt I should say, and it wears out and it hardens, and you can see at this point it's barely anything. I mean, it's this isn't a 1/16 of an inch thick at this point. So this felt doesn't hold up well, and this is why your keyboard is so noisy. That's why. Because the key weight falls back on that, and that's what you hear. So basically what we're going to be doing here is taking an X-Acto knife, and it takes a while. To take an X-Acto knife, go ahead and scrape all this off, and then I take alcohol, a good clean alcohol, and with a lint-free rag, using alcohol, I'll clean off the residue that was here. You know, there's a temptation to go ahead and take the caulk and lay the layer of caulk over and the new felt on top of that and just leave this here. But my feeling is, look, this is old, and as this deteriorates, if you just go on top of it, this older material, as it deteriorates, is just going to take your new caulk and new piece of felt with it, and then you're screwed again. So even though this is, you know, some padding, and it's tempting to use it in addition to the other newer padding coming, I'm taking it off because I'd rather have all new material here in terms of durability over time. So here is a demonstration, at least the technique I'm using to get the old original felt, rubberized felt, I don't know. Just could be old felt, but whatever. This is the method I'm using to take this off. It's actually working pretty well, relatively speaking. So using a very thin blade. X-Acto knife was a little thick, but one of these cheapo Beijing tools type of blades worked pretty good. Just put a little tension, pulling it, cut, pull, cut, pull. There's going to be some residue left, but just go back with the blade and cut the residue off. Boom, it's coming off a nice piece. Just get the crap, any crap that might have gotten kicked back under the weight, and go through and just pick out any little crap, because there will be stuff in there. So here is the pre-felt replacement. Old felt's been removed. Surface has been cleaned pretty well. And final swab with Q-tip and alcohol, and give that a couple minutes more to really dry out, and I'll put the new felt on. So the actual felt I'm using is about an 1/8 inch thick. I obtained this at a reupholstery supply store. You know, I bought a meter wide sheet and, I don't know, well over a foot wide. So what I'm doing is I'm going to cut it just with scissors. You could use a blade. If you want to be precise and you got a big flat surface or shop area, yeah, you'd go ahead and use a board and use a blade and just cut it real precisely. But I freehanded the other one. It looked pretty good actually when I got done. So basically you're looking at like a 1/2 inch strip. That's the felt that's going to go down, and just cut that strip about that wide all along and grab the caulk. I mean, the ideal way to cut your felt is to make a sandwich, right? In this case, it's a couple of not fantastic shelves. Got my roll of piece of felt, meter long there. And then, you know, you're shooting for like 9/16, but whatever. First you need to get a straight edge, obviously. So if you have a wide enough piece of felt, you can use these to start with a straight edge. I'm not having great results using this type of a blade. I think a brand new single edge razor blade would be the correct tool. After you've cut your strip down to, you know, 9/16-ish of an inch wide, then cut it to length first. So lay it in there and just cut it to length with a little bit hanging over. You can cut the tails off later. So make sure you got the right length. On the 2500 job, I used a lot more modest bead of caulk, but you know, the caulk itself is also a big component in reducing the keybed noise, because it's added that, you know, it's an added layer of reflection, of absorption actually. So on my 2600, I'm going pretty thick on this with the caulk. The bead of caulk is super thick. Also, it also is a bit of a pain in the butt if you don't do this, because the caulk wants to jump off the. It may want to goop off of the felt while you're actually lifting it to install it, which is annoying to say the least. So I'm just going to kind of lightly work the caulk. I have laid the caulk onto the strip of felt, which I've tried cutting this felt with both razor blade and scissors, and I think scissors works better. So there's it. I use my finger to just lightly press the caulk into the first layer of felt, because I'm going to do two again. And then you pull it taut. And not a simple procedure per se, but very doable. Kind of use and you can barely use the actual weights to kind of guide you in a little bit until you are at depth. And it stretches a little bit and then it kicks back in, but whatever. Then you want to take a tool of sorts and begin tamping it in. Here's a sample of my felt leveling technique. You may find a different way preferable, but using the barrel of an X-Acto point tool. First I go through and I've been rolling it, kind of pushing with the flat end, well the flat end, the thin end, and then I go through at the barrel end and I roll. a slight angle, and just roll down the felt. Just kind of, sometimes you got to be careful, get a little caulk on there, clean it up. I also, when I put the caulk on this replacement single layer of felt, I bias the caulk towards the outside, not the inside, to reduce any overflow considerations. In any event, that's the deal. So you may find other ways, but I'm just going to use this, rolling it down there. Not pressing too hard, but you know, some pressure. Here's the sound of the keyboard after drying overnight. Notice nothing sticking. Night and day improvement. Regarding any questions about the durability of this repair or the endurance of it, you know, it's a pretty decent, robust quality felt at you know, an 1/8 inch thick or so, and experience using this quality of caulk and construction, I'm very confident that the two together should last, you know, at least 5 years, maybe 10 years. Maybe depending on, to some extent, on how much use the keyboard's getting, whether you're playing out professionally, daily, etc., etc. You know, this is subject to spills and stuff because between the keys, anything that would go through the keys, whether it's dust or spillage or whatever, it's going to go through the keys, and where's it going to end up? It's going to end up here. So it's actually, this one is actually needs a cleaning. I mean, if you look in this area here, I don't know if you can tell with the reflection, the glare, but see, it's kind of grimy in that area on the circuit board. And you look over here where I just wiped it clean using you know, rag with some isopropyl alcohol on it, and you see the crap coming off it. But you definitely want to take these off and clean up. Let's give a quick demo here on how you're cleaning out the contact pads. Q-tips, alcohol, decent quality alcohol. You know, you're just going into these guys, and I've already did 4 of them, so you know, start out with a spin inside the rubber cup, and taking kind of, there's usually a little bit of markings around each side of that. Might as well try and clean it up. And clean up around it as you go. I already wiped off all this using paper towels or shop towel with the alcohol on it. Anyway, you get the idea. So just spin it in there. It definitely picks up some crud, whatever's been collected in there. Do a, you know, don't really rub too hard, but clean up the area around it, spin. So I'm going to take some lithium grease in a very light coat. I made a little batch here, a little dish or spot, I should say, of lithium grease, so I can really easily just sort of get a light coat and Q-tip a light coat. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to very lightly condition each cup. And again, you don't want to end up with residue. And, you know, you don't even really have to see it, right? It's just go around the area that's going to be pressed, subject to the action of going up and down as through the metal frame. So the areas of friction, right? The points of friction, you want to give them just a really light coat. It's better than nothing, that's my view. And go through and do each of these like that. Voila, so they have a little bit of lubrication, long-term lubrication against the friction of the keypad. And again, you know, because you're doing this type of work, use a dust cover on your keyboard. So here's where I'm lubing these based on the key points. So if you figure that this is on the naturals, these are what the key is actually sliding up and down on. When you know, both applying a very light coat, and what I'm doing is I'm spinning the Q-tip in the same direction that I spun it when I was applying the grease. So essentially that further reduces the probability or risk of leaving Q-tip threads on your mechanism components. And same goes here on the flats, sharps, whatever. This is the actual tab that it rides up and down on. Try not to do what I just did was get any grease on your felt. On the keys themselves, kind of logical. These are the tabs that apparently cause squeaking. Now these keyboards did not squeak, so that's why one of the reasons I didn't initially proceed with any lubrication. Anyway, I already kind of did this, but again, using a spinning technique with your Q-tip greatly reduces the possibility or probability that you'll leave any threads behind. Same goes on the naturals. These two guys apparently are what cause the squeakiness, and other people's tutorials say to use Vaseline or whatever, but I'm using white lithium. And same goes on here. These are the actual mechanisms that slide, so where they make surface with those tabs on the key bed, I'm lubricating there. Same goes over here on the inside of the naturals. Just kind of zipping a light coat, and I do mean light, all over these contact surfaces, make contact with that. Further, I am going over here, and I'm doing a quick spin where the seat of the spring is. Not that that thing moves that much, but it's kind of like, why not? Same goes here where the rocker tab goes in. I consider those sort of why not points of lubrication. Anyway, I'm going back and redoing all of these keys because I didn't really absorb the merit of doing this as a preventative measure when I was removing and replacing the contact felt to quiet the keyboard, which it now is. And I did lubricate all of these as I presented prior. So now I'm going to go back and take the extra step, lubricate all the keys as a preventative measure for long-term care. Reset the black keys first, made extra easy by the fact that there's these front tabs here to remind you to locate them and snap them in. Boom, boom. Remember that they are the kind of copper colored springs. The white keys are more chrome colored springs, and the black keys are copper colored springs. And I don't think you need any special tools to do this. Fancy cut whatevers, just thump them in. All the flats are installed, conditioned and installed, clean, conditioned and installed.